With the first female umpire now working in baseball, it's time to take a look at how women have made historic strides in the world of professional sports by ruining everything. You see, in the past, professional sports provided a safe method for wives to get their husbands out of the damn way by placing them in front of the television where they could watch something completely meaningless that wasn't. That way, the wives could get their work done, and if they occasionally dropped in on the TV room with a sandwich and a beer, their husbands would happily devote the rest of their lives to their support and happiness. Later, over dinner, the husbands could describe every play of the game in agonizing detail, which would give the wives time to mentally organize their schedules for the week, since they didn't have to listen to a word their husbands were saying because it was just about a guy on TV hitting a ball with a stick for some reason. At least their husbands hadn't spent the day watching some naked girl pretend to enjoy getting strangled during sex, which would only have given them bizarre ideas about how they should spend the rest of the weekend. Now all that has changed. Women are invading every aspect of sports so that men can watch other men do useless things for no reason while thinking about sexual strangulation at the same time. For instance, after ball games, attractive female sportscasters are now assigned to interview players, so male viewers can listen vaguely to some athlete saying, "You've got to take it one game at a time," while simultaneously wondering what the female sportscaster would look like if she were wearing some ridiculous leather contraption and a pair of handcuffs. Having more women athletes on the field has also changed the nature of sports by ruining everything. Sports used to reflect masculine values like winning and also more winning. But now, sports also have to reflect female values, which run the gamut from incomprehensible to non-existent, depending on the woman's mood on any given day. For example, when gymnast Simone Biles quit the Tokyo Olympics because she had some girly problem called the twisties, most men felt this was tantamount to losing, which according to many sports analysts is approximately the opposite of winning. But no, the men were swiftly informed that in fact Simone Biles had been very brave to quit like a girl over her girly twisties. And ever since then, Olympic women's gymnastics has included quitting as an event, along with crying, hugging the winner as if you were happy for her, and giving men a look that says they better not say something insensitive or they'll be hell to pay. In women's basketball, Caitlin Clark has completely transformed the game by causing people to realize there's such a thing as women's basketball. To thank her, black women players have been repeatedly beating the living crap out of Clark for being talented while white. This turns out to be a game that men will actually watch because it involves women wrestling with each other. So now men are showing up at women's basketball games and hurling sex toys down at the court, which has also made the women's game more popular by including sex toys. Even so, a women's basketball game remains the least popular American event that isn't a colonoscopy. And when the players recently marched outside the stadium holding signs that said, "Pay us what we're worth," they discovered they actually owed the league $15,000 apiece. To prove that it's not only women who ruin everything in sports, the NFL's Minnesota Vikings have hired 2 male cheerleaders. So now, instead of an occasional amusing glimpse of pretty girls prancing around the sidelines in an intriguingly suggestive way, Vikings fans are being treated to 2 prancing homosexuals. Something no sentient creature wants to see, except other homosexuals who aren't even watching sports because they're homosexual. And as for the first female umpire, so far, her ball and strike calls have been about 1.5% less accurate than the average males, which is being hailed as really great for a girl and should transform the sport completely by ruining everything. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. All right, we are back laughing our way through the funnest president ever. Let me start the show, and I'll only mention this 3 or 4 times during the show by reminding you to go and pre-order After That, The Dark. Publishers Weekly, the big trade magazine, called it brilliant. I'm really trying to push up those pre-sales so we can put it on a list and basically keep the series going. I've got I'm writing the next one, but it's the last contract I have, so I would really like it if we could build up these pre-sales and really push this one over the the top. If you're going to buy it, please buy it. If you want to wait and buy it later, buy it now and then also buy it later. That would really help. Also, no matter where you're looking at this, if it's on, YouTube or on DailyWire Plus, where you should be watching it, even if it's just something that's going on in your imagination or your dreams, please leave a comment, even in your imagination or your dreams, where you can collect it there. And if it's sufficiently morally disgusting, we will read it on the air because that's who we are. Today's comment comes from a guy or girl whose name I can't pronounce. It's R.T. Yayobsi. I'm sorry. I wish I could pronounce the name, but I can't. It says, hey, if you were to interview an AI recreation of Jim Acosta on CNN, would you then be interviewing Jim Acosta's dead career? This is because Jim Acosta interviewed a dead person reconstructed with AI to give the proper dead person opinion. So, yes, that would be I could watch Jim Acosta live and it would still be artificial intelligence. All right, let us get to today's episode. Welcome to the revolution. As you know, I never sleep, but sometimes I have to sleep. And when I really, really want to get to sleep, I use Beam's Dream Powder. Beam is proudly founded in America and run by people who share our values, hard work, integrity, and delivering results. It's a healthy nighttime blend packed with science-backed ingredients shown to improve sleep so you can wake up refreshed and ready to take on the day. And unlike other sleep aids, there's no next day grogginess, just great restful sleep. I will never use those others, but I will use Beam Dream. Dream is made with a powerful blend of all natural ingredients: reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin. Say that 5 times fast and you may already be asleep. Plus, it tastes fantastic. It's no wonder Beam has already logged 17.5 million better nights of sleep for people who refuse to settle for mediocrity. Here's the deal. Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount of up to 40% off. Try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time. Go to shopbeam.com/Klavan and use code Klavan at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Klavan and use code Klavan for up to 40% off. You know how to spell Beam. How do you spell Klavan? It's Klavan. Sleep better, wake up stronger, and show up ready for your family, your work, and your country. Because when you're well rested, you're unstoppable, and we need more people like that. Chapter 1, the news is not the news. There is some news this week. Trump has federalized Washington, D.C.'s law enforcement, and he's, more importantly, as far as I'm concerned, he's trying to get the homeless encampments off the street, which would beautify the place in a big way. He's going to Alaska to try to talk to Putin, trying to talk Putin into peace, making peace in the Ukraine. And Adam Schiff has been accused of leaking classified information to push the Russia hoax during Trump's first term, which isn't news if you've been watching the show, because I've been telling you the guy's dirty for years at this point, and he really is a dirty guy. He's a true McCarthyite. But anyway, none of this is the real news, and I'll talk about some of it. I'll talk about federalizing the law enforcement in D.C. because I think that's an important story. But the big news, I think, is happening silently, and it's happening invisibly beneath the eye line of the people who report the news. They don't see what's going on. There's this famous story about the French Revolution. After the storming, the French Revolution is said to have begun with the storming of the Bastille, which was a French prison. And so people thought they were being held there by, an oppressive power. And so they stormed the Bastille to free the prisoners. And this was on July 14th, Bastille Day, July 14th, 1789, which I remember because that's the day after my birthday. I think I just turned 17 when it happened. And the next thing, after I finished my cake, I'd heard that the Bastille was getting stormed. But anyway, the story goes that the king, Louis XVI, heard about the storming of the Bastille, and he turned to his friend, the Duke of de la Rochefoucauld, who was a reformer who became part of the revolution. And the king, hearing about the storming of the Bastille, said, "Is this a revolt?" And the Duke answered, "No, sire, it's a revolution." In other words, the guy at the top of the social structure, the king, had no clue that the structure was actually being burned to the ground, and it was going to take him and his head with it in 2 separate baskets. And that's what's happening now. It's happening right this minute. Everybody's fixed on Trump. Everybody's saying Trump this, and Trump is doing that, and Trump thinks this, and Trump is doing that. All very important, all news. But that's not what's happening. What is happening below the level of Trump. And even he is not in control of it, though he sees it, he understands it, and he's actually doing stuff that helps it along. So I've had this very interesting summer because I've been between drafts of the next Cameron Winter novel after that, The Dark, which I may have mentioned, maybe the last one, if you don't go out and pre-order after that, The Dark, while I'm speaking. So I'm between drafts. So I've had a little less work on my table. I'm only working like a 12-hour day. And I've gotten to the movies more than I usually do. And I'll talk about some of that. And I've also been, I don't usually go to the movies in the theater during the summer because I'm just not that interested in summer movies. But I've also been sampling cultural commentary, podcasts and things like that, because the culture is where the future announces itself. I think, people say politics is downstream from culture, and some people say culture is actually downstream from politics, but both of those are actually wrong. They're actually one organic unity. Culture and politics are actually one thing, just like the life of a people is one thing. I would say the human race is actually just one thing in some ways. And I've been talking to Spencer Klavan, no relation, about this at our New Jerusalem Substack. And Spencer, being a classic scholar, quoted a line from Plato's Republic: "In a city, the style of music never changes unless the structure of law does too." And a lot of times conservatives translate that to, if I can get control of the poets and the musicians, I'll be able to change the laws. But that's not what he says. He says the style of music never changes unless the structure of law changes too. So you notice it's not that one comes first, it's that they happen together, like nature and nurture. You can never tell what is your original self or what was because of the way you were raised. But the culture is sometimes where you can see the situation more clearly because it's captured in one person's imagination and you can see what's coming before it comes. So I've been sampling these cultural commentaries, and they're all on the left because the right can't do cultural commentary because the right has no clue what the culture is all about. All it does is complain and say, oh, there was a nude in this movie and, there's a gay person and now I'm traumatized. And like, that's not talking about the culture. What's really interesting is when you listen to the left talk about the culture, one, they really know the culture. So I was listening, for instance, to the Slate Culture Gabfest, very knowledgeable in ways no right-winger is, except me. Like this bit, they're really talking about the arts. They're talking about actors. They're talking about movies. But they also are completely culturally sequestered. They have no idea that we exist. They have no idea. They have no idea that the right exists or that they're part of the culture or they have anything to say about the culture. And it is absolutely fascinating. There was one guy on the Slate Fest who's writing a book, and he said, well, it's about how the religious right started a culture war in the 90s. And I thought, they didn't start the culture war. Conservatives never start anything. They simply react to things. That's why they're called reactionaries. It was you who started the culture war, and the religious right by, for instance, getting Roe v. Wade passed for one thing, and the religious right fought back. But because the left is absolutely convinced that they are the culture, they don't just own the culture. They're convinced they are the culture. They think it's only a war when it's not a culture war when they do it. It's only a war when they fight back, and they think that it's going to remain like that forever. I'm sure Louis XVI thought the same thing when he heard about the Bastille. So a great example of this, Trump is wonderfully trying to purge the Smithsonian Institute of Woke Culture in their museums. And the White House sent a letter to the Smithsonian Institution on Tuesday requesting a comprehensive internal review of its museums. According to the letter from Smithsonian Institution Secretary Lonnie Bunch III, the initiative aims to ensure alignment with the president's directive to celebrate American exceptionalism, remove divisive or partisan narratives, and restore confidence in our shared cultural institutions. Now, if you don't listen to the show, you've never heard of Lonnie Bunch III. To me, he's a very sinister Obama type who pretends he's just an ordinary guy. He's not fighting a culture war, but he really is. So Jillian Michaels, the fitness lady, and she has a podcast and all that, she is on Abby Phillips' show. I think that's her name, on CNN. And she points out that this is not Trump starting a culture war. He's not trying to inject politics into the Smithsonian. He's trying to take out leftist politics. He's just trying to make it a museum. And everybody goes, no, no, he's trying to make it white. He's trying to erase the history of slavery. And she says, no, it's every exhibit is about hating white people, and she brings the receipts. And this is what she says. This is cut one.
Every single thing is like, oh, no, this is all because white people bad. And that's just not the truth. Like, for example, every single exhibit, I have a list of every single one. Like, people migrated from Cuba because white people bad. Not because of Castro. Yes, no, it's in there. That's what I'm saying. You don't actually know what's in there. Do you know that when you walk in the front door, the first thing you see is a gay flag?
Jillian, you have a lot of stuff in front of you.
Yeah, I do,
what
because
exactly
I don't, because here's the thing.
are you talking about?
Okay, I'll give you an example.
Yeah, please.
There's one called Change Your Game, right? This has been an installation there. Is gender testing fair in sports? Does that, and then it goes on to talk about how it's complex to do gender testing in sports. It's not complex. It's basic science. That's untrue. It's XX chromosome, XY chromosome. That's sports. Is it fair to have biological men competing against biological women in sports? No. But why is this in the Smithsonian?
So they won't let her, after that, they just swarm her and they won't let her talk. And she says, yeah, because if you let me talk and you let me really bring this stuff forward, you'll lose the argument. And of course, that's true. Slavery was universal. Most of Africa, almost all of Africa, had slaves. Who ended it? The British ended it, and the Americans during the Civil War. White people ended it. And Dave Chappelle can go on and say, well, black people freed themselves essentially. But no, they didn't. It was white people who ended slavery, and the Japanese, by the way, should just give credit where credit is due. So the Smithsonian is lying, and Donald Trump wants them to tell the truth, but because the left is so sequestered and thinks that they're the culture, they don't know they're lying because there's no one to tell them. And when they do, when somebody like Jillian does tell them, they shout her down. Trump understands all this, but they don't, and they're defending a culture. They're just like Louis XVI. They are sitting in a cultural structure that is not, it's falling down. It's on fire. It's turning to ashes. And I've told you before that Trump and Obama, who are basically the two sides of this, they're not the beginning of something. They're the end of something. And the end of something is always the beginning of something, but they're bringing something to an end. So like Obama marked what they thought was going to be the left's continuation into taking over the culture, into this sinister and dishonest attempt to have top-down socialism and anti-whiteness and opening the borders and all this. Zoran Mamdani is the same thing. He's way ahead in the polls for New York City mayor, and I hope he gets elected. I hope New York City gets all the socialism they can stand. I hope they get every inch of socialism they want, because when they choke to death on it, they will let us get on with the future. They'll realize that's the path. It's FAFO. Let them have the socialism. Trump is different. For some, Trump represents a kind of nostalgic attempt to return to what went before, and that may be true. But to me, Walter Russell Mead in the Wall Street Journal, he compared Trump to Napoleon, and there's something to that. Napoleon took the values of the French Revolution and he spread them through conquest. And when he failed in the end, he didn't fail to spread those values. He actually did spread those values. But when he was defeated at Waterloo, he was really bitter that he couldn't be George Washington. He said, the culture will not allow me to be George Washington. But it was George Washington who didn't go in for conquest, who turned his sword over to the civilian authorities so that people could be free. He was the real harbinger of the future. And I think that that's what Donald Trump is doing. They keep accusing him of being Napoleon, but I think what he's doing is he's clearing the path for the future to start, because this future is going to be made by individuals. It's not going to be made by government, although government can assist. So this cultural change is burbling up from the bottom. And right now, it's almost invisible. Even I, who know so much, even I do not know what it's going to be. But I think Trump has cleared a path for it. I'm afraid it will come with violence, but if it doesn't, if the British didn't bring it with violence, the British kept the violence of Napoleon off their island and they transformed their culture. There's always violence, of course, but without big violence. That's what I'm hoping will happen here. If that happens, if Trump clears a path for individuals to reconstitute the culture, people like you and me, if he just clears the path and then he's gone because nobody lives forever and he can't run for another term, if that happens, the new American culture is going to look something like this.
We're going to win so much. We're going to win at every level. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. We're going to win economically. We're going to win with the economy. We're going to win with military. We're going to win with healthcare and for our veterans. We're going to win with every single facet.
da, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. You'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore.
I feel pretty, oh so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and gay.
We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
Many people say to me, gee, you don't look over 152. And it's true. I look much younger than I am, and that's because I take care of myself. I exercise, and I eat my fruits and vegetables in the form of balance of nature. We all know we're supposed to eat fruits and vegetables, but when was the last time you actually got through 47 different fruits, vegetables, spices, and fibers in a day? Never, unless you're some kind of grocery store sampler gone rogue. That's where balance of nature comes in. These aren't your typical supplements filled with ingredients you can't pronounce unless you've been struggling to pronounce apple. We're talking about actual whole foods, mango, spinach, turmeric, blueberries, good stuff. Here's the beautiful part. You can take these capsules normally, or, and this is where it gets fun, you can open them up and sprinkle the powder on literally anything. Want to make your boring oatmeal taste like it went to nutrition boot camp? Fruits powder. Want your salad to actually have some personality? Hit it with some veggies blend. Plus, they're convenient and easy to take with you wherever you go. No bags, no mess, no measuring, just clean. Quality ingredients ready to go. Go to balanceofnature.com and use promo code Klavan for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Plus, get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code Klavan. And you say to yourself, how do I spell that? It's Klavan. Chapter 2, Home Rules. So the reason Trump is allowed to take over D.C. and enforce the law using the National Guard and FBI agents, things, that's what he's doing, is because of something called home rule. D.C. is unique in that it's a federal city. It's the seat of government. And so Trump controls its National Guard, right, like a governor controls the National Guard of a state. And he can take over law enforcement for 30 days and longer if Congress says so, because Congress basically makes the rules for home rule. And what's interesting, first of all, is that immediately the media went into corrupt lying mode. It's all they've got. It's like a reflex. So when they hit you in the knee and you kick like that, that's what they start lying. They just Trump moves and they just start lying. And the thing they say is that, why is he doing this? Crime is at historic lows. It's at historic lows, which is just like, remember when inflation was going on the roof and they go, there's no, what are you talking about? Like people couldn't eat, it's like, please, sir, may I have some more? Why would you want more? You're fine. So the press starts doing that. The only problem is unlike, the Midwest, where the press doesn't live and has no idea and does not care what's going on. So they didn't know how bad the inflation was and what it meant to have eggs, at $50 an egg. They had no idea what that meant. They do live in D.C. See, so that's a problem. And the police are supporting Trump. And the people are too, by the way. There's a lot of the people are. But the police are saying, yeah, we're overrun by crime. And so all these statistics that they're quoting, the head of the police union, Greg Pemberton, says the stats are fake and the police are just putting out to cover up the fact that things are out of control. Here's Greg Pemberton, the head of the police union in D.C.
I think there's a potentially a drop from where we were in 2023. I think that there's a possibility that crime has come down. But the department is reporting that in 2024, crime went down 35%, violent crime. And then again, another 25% through August of this year. That is preposterous to suggest that cumulatively we've seen 60+% drops in violent crime from where we were in 23, because we're out on the street. We know the calls we're responding to.
So this is the thing. People are getting killed in the street. People are getting mugged. Nobody wants to walk in D.C. at night, after the bars close and after things start to quiet down. Nobody wants to do it. Kids are taking over blocks and things like that. And so even the journalists know this. I mean, this is the first time Trump has done something where, like, I'll be looking at the Washington Post and somebody will say, no, I don't like what he's doing. Here's Joe Joe Biden. Here's Joe, the best Biden ever, Scarborough. Okay, and here he is admitting that even Democrats are glad that Trump is doing this. Is cut 4.
The people that are cheering this on privately are not like right-wing Republicans, are not MAGA people. A lot of our friends are in the media, and also Democrats that worked on Joe Biden's campaign, that worked on other campaigns, that are saying, yeah, I'd like to feel safe walking around this city. If the federal government can be a positive partner in keeping the streets safe, while, again, forming a partnership with the D.C. police and not taking over, then at least the people I've spoken with that live in D.C. day in, day out, see this as a positive step.
So what you're getting from the Democrats who, and the press, but I repeat myself, who just knee-jerk have to hate Trump. Whatever Trump does, it's bad. You're getting the girl argument, basically. I like what he's doing, but I just don't like the way he does it. It's like you argue with your wife and she says it's not what you're saying, it's the way you're saying it, which is wife talk for yes, dear. You are completely correct. You're 100% in the right, but I don't like the way you're saying it. So that's what the Democrats are saying now. But just as important as getting as bringing down crime, which is the first thing you have to do in a city, is getting these homeless encampments off the streets. Just before I talk about that, here is White House Smoke Show Carolyn Levitt explaining what they're doing, cut 5.
Homeless individuals will be given the option to leave their encampment, to be taken to a homeless shelter, to be offered addiction or mental health services, and if they refuse, they will be susceptible to fines or to jail time. Again, these are pre-existing laws that are already on the books. They have not been enforced, which is part of the reason for this federalizing of the National Guard, to bring in this assistance for law enforcement. While we are targeting criminals and trying to remove criminals off of the streets, we also want to make DC safe and beautiful, and that involves removing mentally disturbed individuals and homeless encampments as well.
Okay, now here's the thing. Homelessness, which is all over in cities across America, has nothing to do with housing. It has nothing to do with housing. Virtually nothing to do with housing. It has to do with mental illness, which we don't treat, and we can't force people into asylums. And it has to do with drug abuse. And sometimes those two things go together because when people are mentally ill, they're in terrible mental anguish, and they try to medicate themselves with drugs. And to leave these people out in the street, the Democrats have destroyed our cities. Chicago is just a free fire zone. L.A., obviously, a mess. San Francisco used to be, I went to college out west and I lived in San Francisco for a couple of years. One of the most beautiful cities I have ever seen. I didn't even like it there, but I was just overwhelmed by its beauty, and I couldn't dislike it as long as the sun was up. It was just so beautiful. And it descended into a filth-ridden hellhole while people just stood there and kept electing, and they're still electing the same people, although even those people have become a little bit more responsive. Why? Because the Democrats told them they were out-Christing Christ. They were being so compassionate. Absolute. Oh my God, it's not who we are to tell these people. I even saw somebody, when Trump said he was going to clean out the homeless, I saw somebody on X say, the government can't tell people where to live. It can tell people where not to live. It can tell them where not to live in our national parks. It can tell them not to live on city streets. The city streets belong to the people, to everybody. You cannot live on them. It is not something you're allowed to do. And as I've said many times, Christianity is not a governing principle. That is one of the reasons why Jesus said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Let Caesar take care of Caesar's domain. Let God take care of God's domain, which is your soul. So Jesus said, I want you to personally be good to the poor and to unclasp your hands a little and let some of that money that you have in your hands go to the poor. He didn't say the government can therefore steal your money and make programs designed to do nothing for the poor, but keep them dependent and also employ the people they want to have patronage, which is just a system for staying in power and has nothing to do with alleviating the suffering of the poor, which may occasionally take place, but it doesn't, obviously, if they are living on the street. It is brutal to leave mentally ill people on the streets. It is brutal because eventually one of them, and more than one of them, is going to commit a crime. He's going to get upset. He's going to hurt somebody. He's going to mistake somebody for the devil or whatever and hurt somebody. And he's going to wind up in a jail cell, a cell the size of a bathroom. So you've got a man who doesn't even know what reality is, locked up in a cell. I mean, that is Victorian in the bad sense of that word. That is a throwback into the old snake pit asylums. This is not gospel. It is much better to make sure by force these people are put in places where they can get medication, which they couldn't even get in the old days. And they have no right to live in the streets. We have a right to cities. The ordinary man, the man or woman who works or mothers or pays taxes and shops and raises children and creates a new life and creates the city's future, that person has a right to live in a clean, healthy city because the city is his or her home. You know, we're a nation of free individuals. We're a free nation of individuals. But we also have to have a civil society in order for that to be true, right? The other day I said to a friend of mine, I said, you know, I only have one political opinion, which is that people should be free. And he said, yes, but you're not a libertarian. And I said, right, because libertarianism leads to chaos, which leads to tyranny. Freedom requires order. It requires a civil society. You need safe streets. You need people behaving themselves. You know, this is America. There's going to be some cultural chaos here. That's what a live, free, wild country is. We accept all that. It's part of the landscape. But the way you behave is a language. The way you dress is a language. If you're a man who dresses up like a woman, it's not, why do you care? It's my choice, okay? You do it. You have the right to do it, but that doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right. You are bringing down the moral order of the city. If you cover your body in tattoos, I think you're doing the same thing. You have a right to do it. I'm not denying you have a right to do it, but that doesn't mean you are right to do it. Our clothes, our behavior, this is a language we speak to each other, and if we don't speak in a civil tone to one another, we won't have a civil society. We don't have a civil society, we will not be free. But the most important part of a civil society, I mean, the city is your home, but in the city, you have a home. And this is why I called this chapter Home Rules, because right now there are two things we can say about a home. One, men can't afford to buy them, and two, women can't afford to make them. Men can't buy homes to provide for their wives and families, and women can't make homes because they have to bring in money or because they've been told that making a home makes them less, that it makes them less powerful, that it makes them less important, that it makes them worthless, essentially. That is basically the feminist line. So suddenly the home basically doesn't exist. And this is the thing I want to talk about because I think that this cultural revolution that is invisible right now, but it is the thing that is really happening. It's beyond Putin. It's beyond the National Guard in D.C. It's beyond all these things, is this individual society that is growing up, just like it did when Washington turned his sword over. This new freedom of people living as they please is coming up. The key part of it, the central part of it, is fixing the relationship between the sexes so that we can return home. Here's a question worth asking yourself. Do you actually trust your internet service provider? Because depending on where you live, they might be logging everything you do online for government agencies to review later. And in the U.S., it gets even worse. ISPs can literally sell your browsing history to the highest bidder. The solution is ExpressVPN. Here's why. It's an app that reroutes your internet traffic through encrypted servers, keeping it away from your ISP, data brokers, and other snoopers. Of course, you're just shifting trust from your ISP to your VPN provider. So why ExpressVPN? They received over 300 data requests from law enforcement last year, and 0 resulted in customer data being handed over. Not because they don't cooperate, but because they literally don't have the data to give. Their servers run on volatile memory that gets wiped clean. Nothing ever gets saved to disk. You can't hand over what you don't collect. I love ExpressVPN. It works on all your devices with one-tap connection, and their transparency report backs up everything I am telling you. I use it on all the things you can. And that one button thing works good for me because I just think I can do that. I can do one button. So if you want the VPN I trust to protect my online privacy, get ExpressVPN. In fact, you can get 4 extra months of ExpressVPN for free with my special link. Go to expressvpn.com/Klavan. That's EXPRESSVPN.com/Klavan to get 4 extra months free. You may have noticed I didn't tell you how to spell VPN. It's KLAVAN. Chapter 3, At the Movies. Probably people don't remember A. Bartlett Giamatti, but he was an English professor from Yale. His specialty was Renaissance English literature. And for one season, he was also a tremendous baseball fan. And for one season, 1989, he was the commissioner of baseball. And he wrote an op-ed for the New York Times, I will never forget, 1989, which at that time, the New York Times was a newspaper. You probably don't know that, but in those days it was a newspaper. And he wrote a column called The Story of Baseball, You Can Go Home Again. And he talked about the fact that we don't really know when the fourth base in baseball became known as home plate, but he says this. He says, home is an English word, virtually impossible to translate into other tongues. No translation catches the associations, the mixture of memory and longing, the sense of security and autonomy. Home is a concept, not a place. It is a state of mind where self-definition starts, wherein one first realizes one is an original. He says, in America, home is perhaps more poignant because of the extraordinary mobility of the American people. The concept of home has a particular resonance for a nation of immigrants, all of whom left one home to seek another. And basically, he says, this is what baseball is all about. And baseball is typically considered the American sport, the great American sport. It is about leaving home to get home. And that is the American story, right? You leave Italy, you leave, Russia, you leave Ireland, and you come looking for home. And that is also, a bigger story in the sense that because home is where you become an individual, it's also where you find people who are like yourself. And so as an individual, you leave the home that made you, but then you make a home that creates new individuals who are like you. And that idea, the idea that home is behind us and also before us, that's a very Christian idea, right? That we are passing through, that we've come from someplace and we are headed for someplace. You remember that very sweet Carrie Underwood song? I'll play a portion of it at the risk of, sniffling a little bit. But it was called This Is My Temporary Home. I used to listen to it in the car, I'd have to drive because my eyes would fill with tears. But it starts out with a foster child, but he's an optimistic foster child. And he says, this is my temporary home. This is not where I belong. I'm going to a real home. And then it goes to a young mother who's struggling. I'm going to choke up even talking about with a halfway house. And she says, this is my temporary home. I'm getting somewhere else. And it ends with an old man dying. And this is what he says. This is cut 6.
This is my temporary home. It's not where I belong. Windows and rooms that I'm passing through. This is just a stop on the way to where I'm going. I'm not afraid because I know this is my temporary home.
Really nice song. And that's a Christian idea, that this is our temporary home. We have a eternal home elsewhere. And Giamatti talks about, because he's an English professor, he talks about the Odyssey, which is, he says, the source of all romance. And when he says romance, he's not talking about, romance novels. He's talking about a genre of fiction, of adventure fiction, and fiction about chivalry and all this, the romance of the Renaissance and the Middle Ages. And all of it, he says, comes from the Odyssey, which is the story of a man who has gone off to Troy and he has to make his way home. And, while I was at one of the movies that I actually got to see this summer, there was a trailer for Christopher Nolan's new Odyssey. I don't know whether it's any good. It looked interesting. But the theme is out there. That theme of going home is out there. And because I got to see a lot more movies today, this summer, I noticed that there was this kind of adjustment. Now, I think the movies are over as an art form. That doesn't mean there won't be more great movies. It simply means that they're not the way that the culture expresses itself anymore. I'll talk about that a little more maybe, but still, you're still seeing something, a reaching out in these people who have been corrupted by wokeness. They're leftists. They've been corrupted by leftism. But still, you can see that there's this self-correction because they're all people, right? Even the left is filled with people. And I talked about the Fantastic Four a little bit, a story with a baby at the center, a story where they give a sort of magical, look at the baby in the mother's womb. It's the Invisible Woman is pregnant. And, it's like an X-ray or sonogram, but you actually see the baby, and there's no question that this is not the woman's body, that this is another body in the inside the woman, and also the America that is depicted there is the America that sort of the boomer revolutionaries promised us, that they weren't going to take America away from us. They weren't going to change it. They weren't going to make it communist. What they were going to do was just let people in. The blacks who had been kept out, maybe the gays who had been kept out, they were going to become part of America. They were going to assimilate into America. That is not the America we got. We got an America where you're not allowed to say, you know what, I'm not attracted to black women, or I don't want to know black people. I don't like them, or white people, whatever it is you don't like. Knock yourself out. But no. You have to associate with people. You have to hire people. You have to have people in your business. You have to let them into your business. You have to let them use your business. The right of association has been erased by civil rights laws. And that was not what we were promised. We were promised the America that was in the Fantastic Four movie, which is an America where we're all together, but everybody dresses nicely. The men wear hats and ties. The women wear skirts and blouses. It's a very lovely 1960s America, except everybody's invited in, which is an America kind of like what I want. And what's interesting about this is there's a central quarrel. Again, I'll probably quote Spencer a couple of times on the show. My son, Spencer Klavan, no relation, because he and I have been having these cultural conversations. But he pointed this out to me, that there's a quarrel in the movie between Mr. Fantastic, Pedro Pascal, who's of course in every movie, and the Invisible Woman, who is Vanessa Kirby, and it's the division between male rationality, hyper-rationality, blown out of proportion, and female emotional intelligence. And it basically just presents that in the starkest of possible terms, this friction between them because of the difference in the way men think and the way women think. Here's just a little bit of that cut 7.
I don't dream, I don't wonder. I invite the worst possible thing into my head to figure out how to hurt them before they hurt anybody else.
And you know what? Sometimes you being you hurts me.
Okay, now if you said that in a marriage, you could never take it back. That's a terrible thing to say to your spouse. Sometimes you being you hurts me. But in a movie, it's a way of expressing this difference. That it's true. Yeah, it's absolutely true that men can be hyper rational, and just because they want to protect things. So they're saying, well, if we do this, this is happening, and it can't be nice all the time, and that sometimes hurts women. So it's not something you would actually want to say to your spouse, but it is something that happens. Just the fact that you're a male sometimes makes your wife feel bad. Now, yesterday, I tried to avoid seeing Superman. I'm completely uninterested in it, but my grandson is visiting, and so I took him to Superman. And it's a superhero movie. Again, not that interested, but I have to say, I liked it, for what it was. And I'm seeing it with my grandson, so I'm enjoying it through his eyes. And it was pretty wholesome, I could have used a little less language in a movie that's basically for kids. I don't know why kids have to hear that. You can write around it. But it didn't make you feel like you needed a shower, like to wash the gayness off afterwards, It was just a superhero movie, and Superman was pretty much Superman, the all-American guy. And that story, too, was about home. Who was he? He looks back to his parents from Krypton, but ultimately realizes he's gotten his values from his parents in Kansas, who are so old-fashioned they look like they come from a movie made in the 1950s about the 1930s. I mean, that's how old-fashioned they are. They're shouting into their phones because they've never seen a cell phone before. And, but he ultimately, that is his comfort zone. When he comes back from the battle, with the bad guys, he surrounds himself with home. And in this, there's another quarrel. There's a quarrel between Lois Lane and and Superman. And I have to say, what made the movie work, for me at least, was Lois Lane, Rachel Brosnahan, who I guess is from that marvelous Mrs. Maisel. She's a girl, she's incredibly industrious. She's a newspaper reporter. She's smart. She's brave. She's, resourceful. She's all those things. But when the fighting starts, the superhero puts a shield around her and goes off and fights the bad guys. I mean, so she's a girl. So you like her. And she's in a relationship with Superman, David Corran Sweat. And they like each other. This is one of the things I may not have mentioned. I have a new novel coming out after that, The Dark, which you should go out and pre-order. And one of the things that I am most happy about is it has a love story in it that everyone who's read it says really, really works. And why? Because it's about a manly man and a womanly woman, and they like each other. In the movies, whenever they want to show people have gotten romantic, they go to bed together. And listen, no one likes going to bed together more than me. But the thing is, people should like each other. Spouses should like each other. They should like spending time together. They should make each other laugh. And these Superman and Lois Lane in this movie like each other, and one's a girl and one's a boy. And I was just thinking, gee, I feel like I haven't seen this except when I'm reading my stuff. So here's a little bit of their quarrel, which is different. It's more realistic in some ways than the one in Fantastic Four is Cut 8.
Today, the Secretary of Defense said he was going to look into your actions. That's funny?
My actions? I stopped a war.
Maybe.
Not maybe. I did.
In effect, you illegally entered a country.
This is how you're gonna be?
I'm not the one being interviewed, Superman. Did you consult with the president?
No.
You seemingly acting as a representative of the United States.
I wasn't representing anybody except for me. And doing good.
I would question myself in the same situation and consider the consequences.
People were going to die.
So that's a much more classic argument. She's trying to show what a reporter looks like, when the questions he should be asking himself, and he's proud of what he did, and he doesn't want to hear the doubts that they're having, and they apologize to each other. And they apologize to us. And they got in a quarrel. No big deal. They like each other, and she was a little too girly and picky, and he was a little too proud and resistant, and they apologized. Because this is where home starts. This is what home is. This is what home is. Home is a boy and a girl who like each other enough to start the world again. This is what all stories essentially are about. Is there a man manly enough that he can win a girl girly enough to start the world again? So there was an op-ed. This idea of home is now filtering in from everywhere. There's an op-ed in the Washington Post, which I'm reading now because I've canceled my subscription to the Wall Street Journal. And I'm hoping somebody from the Journal hears me say that, because I think a lot of people are probably doing it because it's just become so mindlessly anti-Trump and ridiculous and dishonest. Anyway, so there's an article by Rahm Emanuel. You remember Rahm Emanuel, right? He's obviously running for president, big Democrat running for president. I knew a little bit. I knew his brother, Ari Emanuel, who was a big agent in Hollywood. And he's trying to figure out how to win back men, right? How to win back men who are oddly tired of hearing all about how evil they are and how women have to do everything. And so he wrote an op-ed called "What's Really Depressing America's Young Men?" Younger generation American males are increasingly despondent. The stereotype is of young men perpetually playing video games in their parents' basements, too depressed and shut in to ask women out. But you don't have to be an incel to believe that the system is fundamentally broken and rigged against your success. City and state leaders everywhere are focused on the housing crisis, specifically home ownership. Rents are too high, and even the most ordinary houses are astronomically expensive. These patterns are two sides of the same coin. Now listen, this is a Democrat talking to Democrats. I love it. Unpopular as it might be to say in some quarters of my party, the crisis affects one gender with particular potency. Like it or not, American men are still raised to believe that their role is to act as providers and protectors. And when men whose self-worth is tied up in that aspiration realize they'll never be able to buy a home, they're bound to feel shame and anger. I love when he says they're raised to believe this. They're raised to believe this in every culture, everywhere, maybe because it's true. And then he goes on and lies about the 2008 housing crisis and basically comes up with all these government fixes. But remember, all social movements get co-opted by the left because the right is always busy saying, no, we don't need to change anything. So the left gets to co-opt the social movement and turn it into its own thing. The right should get out in front of this. Interest rates cuts and less restrictive building and zoning laws that basically make homes affordable. But while men want to provide a home, you know that you probably don't know this old song, a house is not a home if no one's there. Women make homes. It is something they are uniquely able to do, uniquely created, constructed to do, and it is something that also makes everybody, including themselves, happy. You know, I asked Lauren Southern to come on the show, and she's not ready to come on yet. She's not emotionally ready, but she's written a book called "This Is Not Real Life," and she says that Andrew Tate sexually assaulted her, which he denies. But after that, she says she tried to heal by becoming a trad wife, and she found herself with a guy who treated her abusively, and she, of course, responded by trying to be the perfect trad wife, and, of course, the more she tried, the worse it got, and she ultimately had to leave. Now, I've said this before. I think that being a trad wife is a form of, because men turn everything into, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, because I think it's a little more than that, and it can be a beautiful thing, but it gets turned into. But that doesn't mean it doesn't represent something good, okay? There is a story in the Washington Post, I believe this morning, by a woman named Abha Bhattarai, and it had a hilarious headline, "Mothers are leaving the workforce, erasing pandemic gains." And that's the way the story is written for a long part of the story, that it was great that women were in the workforce, but now the companies want people to come in. They don't want them to work remotely. And some of the DEI policies are being pushed back, so women don't feel like they're being treated as well. It's only when you get toward the end of the article that you start to hear from the actual women who are saying, "No, I love going home. I wanted to be with my baby. You know, yeah, I used to like working, but now I have a baby. I want to raise the baby. I want to make a home for the baby." You know, it's actually more about that. And, you know, this thing about working remote is not the point. The point is that we do have to make it easier. The right to keep the left from taking over this movement, this moment. The right has to work to make it easier for women to have at-home businesses, to build their own businesses. Because if companies don't want you working remote, the government shouldn't force them to do that, and it's not going to be helpful, and you're not going to be treated well. But if you build your own business, if you can build your own small business in the home, then you can start to be economically an economic contributor while building a home, which is the way it used to be. And I think that's technology solving a problem that technology created. Why is it so hard for these people to include mothering and homemaking as essential, central jobs? For me, they are the job without which there is nothing. You know, BuzzFeed is trying to make a comeback, and their system is to stick political leftism in with social commentary. So Taylor Swift's boyfriends will be 5 stories, and then there'll be a story about how great the left is and all this stuff. And they went after Doug Wilson, who we've had on the show before. Doug Wilson gave an interview to Shapley Nudnik on CNN, and their BuzzFeed says, "The Idaho church is going viral for its terrifying Christian nationalist views. Here's how the internet is reacting to it. Start taxing the churches." None of that is actually happening. Doug basically said, you know, women are the people out of whom people come out of. You know, it is the nature of women that people come out of. And Shapley Nudnik says, "Well, I'm a working woman." He says, "Good for you." There's nothing shocking about it. But why is it so hard? He says their job is to shape souls. You know, he's telling the truth. Why is it so hard for us to realize that everything depends on motherhood, on mothers being mothers, and to make it easy and to make them have economic, vitality and vibrancy is, of course, important, and the right should be paying attention to this. But just remember this. I know I've said this a million times. The way the devil works is he tells you he's making you stronger. And when you say to the devil, "You know what, this heroin, this dope, this porn, this race hatred, this feminism is making me weaker and more unhappy," he always says the same thing. He says, "You just need a little bit more of it, and then it will fix everything." Well, we got to get rid of that. We got to get rid of Satan or the Democrat Party. It's hard to tell the difference before we can make this right. Most of us have gotten used to the chaos, but between shifting global politics and unpredictable markets, it's no wonder we're all looking for ways to protect our futures. One of the smartest moves you can make is securing proper life insurance. And let's be honest, you're probably underinsured and overpaying, especially if you're relying on workplace coverage, but that's where SelectQuote comes in handy. For over 4 decades, SelectQuote has helped more than 2 million Americans secure over $700 billion in life insurance coverage by doing what they do best, shopping for you so you save. Their licensed agents work entirely for you, comparing policies from top-rated carriers in just 15 minutes to find the perfect fit for your health and budget completely free of charge. Whether you need same-day coverage up to $2 million without a medical exam, or you have pre-existing conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, or heart disease, SelectQuote partners with providers who offer specialized policies designed for your unique situation. With life insurance rates at today's historic lows, visit SelectQuote.com and let their licensed agents find you the right policy for your life and budget. They shop, you save. Get the right life insurance for you for less and save more than 50% at SelectQuote.com/Klavan. Save more than 50% on term life insurance at SelectQuote.com/Klavan today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/ how do you spell it? It's Klavan. Final chapter, crashing cymbals. So as I've said repeatedly, this cultural revolution, I think, if it comes, and if it's the right cultural revolution, is going to come from you. It's going to come from ordinary people, and it's going to come from people. I shouldn't say ordinary people. I mean people. It's going to come from individual people, and it's going to. In terms of the arts, it's going to percolate up through the internet. In terms of journalism, which is we're going to also need, it's going to percolate up through the internet. And, it's funny, I've survived as an artist over the years, not because I've been mainstream, but because I have found people to support me. Otto Penzler at Mysterious Press, where they're publishing After That in the Dark, which you should go out and pre-order. But Webster Younts at Zonder, and people who thought I was worthwhile. And because of you and the Daily Wire, because the Daily Wire has promoted me and you have bought the books, I have actually been able to pay them back. But there were years when I couldn't pay them back. There were years when the books didn't sell, but they just believed in me and they kept publishing them. But now some of this stuff is going to happen on the internet because you can do it yourself. And that's true of not just the arts. It's true of all the things that you're doing. It's true of, gathering together with people who share your values. It's true of journalism. It's true of education. All of these things are incredibly important. And I just want to say, as somebody who has been through this system, as an OG here, the internet is beautiful because it does that, because it provides, it democratizes the culture. But it also creates this problem that I've talked about before, the information crisis. There's an information flood exacerbated by the dishonesty of the mainstream media, the dishonesty of the aristocracy, of the elite. Everybody's lying, including the people who tell you everybody's lying. They're also lying. So it's hard to know what the truth is. And that leaves you with an imitation of truth, which is pattern recognition. The internet encourages pattern recognition empty of content, okay? So that's why you get Candace Owens saying the Star of David is a hexagram and occult people have a hexagram, so Israel is a cult country, or Tucker Carlson saying, the Christians were in Nagasaki, we bombed Nagasaki, we were bombing the Christians. That's pattern recognition without actual content, right? Because it has no facts in it. And, I've always said Tucker Carlson uses that word obviously it's a tell because the thing he says before it is never obvious. Pattern recognition, empty of content, is schizophrenia. It's how schizophrenics think they see conspiracies here and there, and they scribble on pages and they say this is related to that. And now I know the moon landing was fake, and 9/11 was a put up job, and all that stuff. That's schizophrenia. Okay, pattern recognition needs content. But pattern recognition is a tool. It is a human tool. It is a gift from God that helps us to see that this life, this physical life with its, all the crazy things that physical life has, like sex and greed and love and all the different, going to the bathroom and all those things, is actually symbolic of another level of life. We start to see patterns, and in those patterns, we start to see the design of God. Now, we see that higher life through a glass darkly, and we always have to remember that. We see it in a dirty mirror, so it requires humility. We can't declare that this is what God wants. We have to say, I think I see something through the shadows. A lot of people are being drawn now to Catholicism, and that's fine. It's a beautiful, beautiful religion. But even the Catholic priests know, and they have always known, they've known this since the Middle Ages, that the reason people are drawn to Catholicism is their symbolism is so well worked out that it does represent something very true. But the priests and the heads of the Catholic Church have always understood that there's a danger of the people mistaking the symbolism for the reality, mistaking the statue of Mary for Mary herself, mistaking an idea for a fact. And all of these things become idolatry if you don't understand. If you think that just because you're wearing a cross, that makes you better than somebody else, or just because you're saying Christ is King, that makes you better than someone else. No, then the symbol of the cross is meaningless. The cross has to be made real by your love. That's the content. So, Tradwife is a good example. A tradwife is a symbol of something beautiful, of women who make homes, make families, make people, make souls. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing, but you don't have to dress up like it's the 1950s, and you don't have to, do all the things that people did in situation comedies. They weren't doing it back then. I was there, so you don't have to do all that stuff. And you certainly don't have to put up with abuse because that somehow means you are submitting to your husband. That's ridiculous, right? All of those things, a woman's, homemaking, her allowing or giving a husband the leadership role, none of those things mean anything without love. If the husband doesn't include his wife's happiness within his happiness, if the wife doesn't understand that part of her job is to submit, but in submitting guide a husband into being the kind of man he should be, all of that stuff becomes empty. So this is just such an urgent moment. It is a really, really important moment because what's happening is invisible, so it's easy to miss it. It's easy to let the left take over the broken places and fix them with socialism and fix them with more government and get a Zoran Mamdani and saying, oh, he's going to sell it. We should pay attention. We should pay attention to the fact that people need affordable homes. We should pay attention to the fact that women want to be at home, but they don't want to be locked in a home. They want that to be part of their life, a very important part of their life, raising kids and making a home, while they also are intellectually engaged and economically engaged and all those things. And we want religion to come back. We need God back in our lives, but we have to understand that images of Christ without love are idols. We fill it up. You can speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but without love, you're a sounding brass and a tinkling cymbal. You're nothing. So we need the opposite of what we have now. We need facts. We need information. We need to understand what our tradition's about. We need journalism and science and education that deliver the facts and let the truth grow out of the facts. And then you have content for your symbolism. Then you have content for your pattern recognition. And so when you see, oh, gee, this world all makes sense, that, God is telling us something through my life, through the history of the world, through the things that happen. When you see those things, you won't be ignorant and you won't be just making an idol out of something that you want to be true. You'll actually be passing down Christianity, the meanings of your traditions, the meanings of your symbols, and the love, because it's the true love. It is always the true love that is going to take us home. If you are stressed about back taxes, maybe you missed the April deadline or your books are a mess, don't wait. The IRS is cracking down. Penalties add up fast, 5% per month, up to 25% just for not filing. But there is help. Tax Network USA can take the burden off your shoulders and stop the spiral before it gets worse. They've helped thousands of Americans, whether you're an employee, a small business owner, or haven't filed in years. If you have messy books, that's no problem. They've seen it all. They know exactly how to clean it all up. With direct access to powerful IRS programs and expert negotiators on your side, Tax Network USA knows how to win. You'll get a free consultation if you qualify. They may even be able to reduce or eliminate what you owe. More importantly, they'll help protect you from wage garnishments or bank levies. Don't wait for the next IRS letter. Call 800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Klavan to talk to a real expert at Tax Network USA. Take the pressure off. Let Tax Network USA handle your tax issues. It's summer's last stand. Days are getting shorter, grills are going cold, and coffee shops are already trying to seasonally gaslight you with pumpkin spice, those rotten bums. Be first in line for everything coming to DailyWire Plus before the fall chaos hits. Stream the brand new The Pope and the Fuhrer, the secret Vatican files of World War II. Michael Knowles just cracked open 80 years of Vatican secrets the history books forgot to mention. Also this fall, The Isabel Brown Show premieres. It's a new voice for a new generation of conservatives who actually know what a meme is. Plus, the Decade of the Daily Wire anniversary show, celebrating 10 years of upsetting all the right people. You get all of it, plus news from the most trusted voices in conservative media and me, and unfiltered, uncensored opinions you can't get anywhere else. Summer ends, freedom doesn't. Get 40% off a new annual Daily Wire Plus membership right now. Join millions just like you at DailyWirePlus.com. Klavan Klapbacks.
If you're soft, weak, and pathetic like so many people, I will fire you so fast.
I love him. I love that guy. Klavan Klapbacks at DailyWire.com. Klavan with a K, Klapbacks with a K at DailyWire.com. Ask whatever you want, personal questions, political questions, spiritual questions. I will do my best to answer them. First one is from Anonymous saying, I love your show. I just gave birth a little over a week ago to my first child. I'd hoped for a natural birth, but a number of complications happened, and I ultimately had to have an emergency C-section. Afterwards, I had severe hemorrhaging. Thankfully, both I and the baby are okay. However, whenever I have a few moments to myself, I find myself crying and reliving what happened. I haven't been physically capable of taking care of the baby as much as I would like. Also, I'm worried that I may hemorrhage again if I give birth again. Do you have any words of wisdom or advice about how to work through the grief? I'm hoping you may have a few words of encouragement. Yeah, I do. First of all, this letter was much longer and I edited it down for space. But one of the things that was true is Anonymous's husband was on the scene and was very loving and was in there. So, bro fist to him and congratulations. But as far as this lady is concerned, you've been through a trauma. That's what's happened. You have been through a terrible event. It's a trauma. And it's nobody's fault, unless the doctor did something that I don't know about. It's nobody's fault. It's not a punishment from God. It is just a bad thing. Bad things happen in the world, and they affect us, and they stick with us, and they kind of lock us into the experience, so we re-experience it, and we flash back to it. It happens to anybody who goes through a trauma. You are not doing something odd. It's not a strange thing. It is something that happens to people who have been traumatized as you've been traumatized. And as I say, the description of this was horrific. It was traumatic just to read about, so I'm sure going through it was a near-death experience and really, really terrible. So, you shouldn't expect yourself to not be in this condition, but you have a mission. You have two missions. And these two missions are on you. It's not fair. It's sorry it fell to you. Other people are going to help you. Hopefully your husband is going to stay cool and be in there with you. But ultimately you have to do this. Your two missions are this. You have to get through it. You have to process the trauma. This doesn't happen by, being tough and saying, I'm going to get through this. It happens by being tough in a more flexible way. You do have to be tough. You have to be strong, but you get through in a flexible way. You get through by talking about it, by talking to the people you love about it, by telling them what you feel about it. And sometimes they're going to get tired of you doing that. They're going to say, well, can't you just get over it? You don't have to get angry at them. It's hard for people to understand. It's hard for all of us, everybody, to understand other people's pain. Don't get angry. If your husband says, can't you just get over it? Just say, I'm trying, I'm working through it, but you got to talk to me. You got to listen to me. You got to hear me out. Talk about it. Talk about what it was like. Talk about if you need a therapist, get a therapist. Sometimes, you pay somebody to hear you talk. That will work too. That's mission one. Process it. Don't let it dominate you. Don't let it take you over. Process the trauma. You have to. We all have to do this. And it's a walk. It's a walk through the desert. It's not, like I said, it's not like just a fight where you say, I'm going to do this. You have to take steps to do it. Meditate, do some yoga, well, maybe you can't do that, but, do the things that people do to strengthen their minds and focus their minds. Take action to get through this. The other thing is you got to take care of your baby. I get it. It's hard. Do what you can do. Do as much as you can do. Don't worry if you don't feel, the way you think a mom's supposed to feel. Don't worry if you're not connecting yet. Do not worry about it. This is about something you do. Take care of the baby as much as you can. And when you can't, you can't, you're not made of stone. If you can't do it, do what you can do. Your husband is in there and good for him. He's going to make it easier for you. But this is a bad thing that happened and it sticks with you. And as I say, you don't just spit out the nail and keep walking. You process it and you do the things that you have to do. So those are your two missions. I'm sure you can do it. I'm sure you will do it. Ultimately, you will get past this. But it has to be done and it's just work. You should be a member of this organization. To become a member, go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code Klavan at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. If you know how to spell it, I can't remember how, but if you know how to spell it, you get 2 months free on all annual plans. Otherwise, if you're not going to become a member, those of us who are living in the joy of membership are going on to the member block and leaving you here in what will become like a Stephen King story, taken over by Klavanlessness, devoured by Klavanlessness until it's simply darkness. And that'll be the rest of your life. It'll just be sitting there in the dark. So become a member, or if you are a member, come to Member Block.